My name is Ethan. I'm 22, and last June was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. I had worked my way through college without much help, juggling late-night shifts at a diner, tutoring jobs, and a few freelance gigs just to keep the lights on in my apartment. Graduation was my finish line, the moment I could finally prove to myself, and maybe, just maybe, to my family that I had done something worth celebrating. But when I walked across that stage, there wasn't a single familiar face in the crowd. Not my mom, not my dad, not even my grandmother, who never missed a church service in her life. The rows of empty chairs in the family section might as well have been spotlights shining on just how alone I was. You see, I have a younger sister, Chloe. She's 20, only 2 years younger than me, and she's always been the golden child. The family excuse has always been that she's sensitive and needs more attention, which in practice meant she got everything she wanted: new clothes, brand-name shoes, a car at 16 that I wasn't allowed to touch even when my bike chain snapped, and I had to walk 3 miles to school. When she found out she was pregnant at 19, my parents transformed the situation into a fairy tale. Suddenly, she wasn't a scared teenager making reckless choices. She was a glowing young woman, bringing the family together. They threw her a baby shower so extravagant it could have doubled as a wedding reception. Guess what date they picked? The same day as my graduation. At first, I thought it was just bad luck. Maybe the venue they wanted was only available that week, or maybe they didn't realize the dates overlapped. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I even called my mom a month before graduation, reminding her of the conflict. She said, "Oh, honey, we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll split the day." But as the weeks passed, the truth became harder to ignore. The invitations for Chloe's baby shower went out, none of which mentioned my graduation. When I brought it up again, my dad told me flatly, "Ethan, you'll have plenty of ceremonies in your life, but your sister, this is once in a lifetime." I remember sitting in silence, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might crack. How could they say that? Like my achievement was disposable. Like I hadn't been clawing my way toward that moment for 4 grueling years. The morning of graduation, I still held out hope. I kept checking my phone, expecting a message that they were on their way. Nothing. I looked around the campus parking lot as students and families streamed in, carrying bouquets and balloons. Still nothing. By the time my name was called, I had accepted what I already knew. They weren't coming. The cheers that erupted for other graduates sounded muffled in my ears. I walked across the stage alone, forced a smile at the dean, and accepted the diploma that had cost me countless sleepless nights. And just as I stepped down the stairs, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, thinking maybe, finally, they had texted something supportive. Instead, it was a message from my dad. "You owe us an apology." My heart stopped. My eyes skimmed the screen again, certain I was misreading, but the words were right there, followed by 37 missed calls. 37. Like I was the one who had done something wrong. Like I was the one who needed to crawl back to them after being abandoned. I couldn't even process it. My friends' families were crowding around them with flowers, hugs, and cameras. Meanwhile, I sat on the edge of a fountain, staring at my phone in disbelief. The text burned itself into my brain. Apologize for what? For existing outside the shadow of my sister? For daring to want a sliver of recognition that didn't revolve around her? I wanted to throw my phone into the water, but instead, I just shoved it in my pocket and clenched my fists until my knuckles went white. That was the moment when the first real crack split open between me and my family. Until then, I had tolerated the favoritism, the dismissive comments, the endless excuses. But that text, that audacity, was the first time I truly felt the weight of how twisted their priorities had become. I didn't answer. Not then, not for the rest of the day. I walked home with my diploma in a plain folder. No balloons, no flowers, no family dinner waiting, just silence. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. That message wasn't just a stab in the back. It was a declaration. And if they wanted to play this game, I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. When I finally turned my phone back on later that night, the notifications stacked so high it felt like my family had been holding a trial without me. Voicemails from my mom started with that sweet tone she always used when she wanted to guilt me. "Ethan, honey, you need to understand this wasn't about you. We all had to be there for your sister. Family comes first." The next one carried a sharper edge. "You've embarrassed us by ignoring your father's calls. Chloe was crying because you didn't congratulate her. Do you really want to ruin her big day?" By the third message, my dad's voice thundered through the speaker. "Pick up the phone and stop acting like a child. You've made your mother upset, and you need to apologize for your attitude. Apologize. That word had been hanging over me since the ceremony, and hearing it repeated in those messages made something in me twist. I sat on my bed, staring at the bare walls of my apartment, diploma case still unopened on the desk, and thought about how every milestone in my life had somehow been downplayed in the name of family unity. When I got my first job at 16, they told me not to brag because Chloe was struggling with school. When I got accepted into college, they said it wasn't fair to talk about it at dinner since Chloe wasn't applying anywhere. Now, the one day that should have been mine alone was sacrificed entirely for her baby shower. 2 days later, I made the mistake of stopping by the family house, thinking maybe face-to-face I could make them understand how much it hurt. I walked in to find pink balloons still taped to the living room walls, confetti scattered across the carpet, and baby gifts stacked higher than the couch. Chloe was perched in the recliner like royalty, scrolling through her phone while my mom fussed over folding tiny onesies. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," my dad said the moment he saw me. He didn't smile. He didn't congratulate me. He just crossed his arms and gave me that look that meant I was already in the wrong. Chloe didn't even glance up when she said, "Did you bring something for the baby? We're still accepting gifts." She said it like it was a joke, but her smirk told me she meant every word. My stomach churned. I had spent what little extra money I had on a new suit for graduation because I wanted to look sharp when I crossed that stage. I didn't have anything left for another round of baby shower gifts. "I came to talk," I said quietly, hoping to keep the anger out of my voice. But my mom cut me off before I could explain. "Ethan, this attitude of yours is unacceptable. We had to make a choice, and we chose to support your sister because she needed us more. You should have understood that." I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was just a misunderstanding. But she meant it. To her, it was that simple. Chloe needed them. Therefore, my graduation didn't matter. "I needed you too," I whispered, more to myself than to them. My dad's eyes narrowed. "Don't start with that selfish talk. You think walking across a stage compares to bringing a new life into this world? You should be grateful we even came back here to celebrate you now. Celebrate me." That was the word he used as I looked around the room, still decorated for Chloe's shower, with no trace that anyone had remembered my milestone at all. Not a card, not a balloon, not even a congratulations, just piles of pastel wrapping paper and rattles. I realized then that they didn't see me as someone worth celebrating. I was a footnote in their story about Chloe. When I didn't answer, Chloe finally set her phone down and smirked at me. "Don't sulk. You'll get over it. Besides, you'll probably have another graduation when you go for your master's, right? This one was just practice." The casual cruelty of her tone knocked the wind out of me. She genuinely believed my years of struggle, of clawing my way through college debt-free, were nothing more than practice. I left without saying another word. As I walked to my car, I heard my dad call after me. "You're not welcome back until you learn some respect." The door slammed, and that was that. That week, I watched as Chloe posted picture after picture from her baby shower on social media. There she was, glowing in a floral dress, surrounded by mountains of presents and smiling relatives. Comments flooded in from extended family. "So proud of you, Chloe. You're going to be a wonderful mother." Not a single mention of me or the fact that I had graduated. It was like I had been erased from the family narrative entirely. I thought maybe an aunt or cousin would at least reach out privately. But when I saw them in person a few weeks later at a family barbecue, the truth hit me harder than any silence online. "You know, Ethan," my uncle said with a laugh, "you really shouldn't have skipped your sister's big day. That was selfish." My aunt chimed in. "Yes, we were all there, and it was beautiful. Your absence really cast a shadow." My absence. They made it sound like I had chosen to boycott, like I had intentionally ignored my sister's milestone to sulk about my own. No one believed or cared that it was the other way around. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I felt something inside me harden. For years, I had told myself that if I worked hard enough, if I achieved enough, maybe my family would finally see me. But now I understood. No amount of success would ever outweigh Chloe's place on the pedestal they built for her. And as much as it hurt, that realization carried with it a strange, cold clarity. But I wasn't ready to act yet. Not then. First, I needed to see just how deep their favoritism would run. A few months passed after graduation, and I kept my distance. Calls went unanswered. Texts left unread. Family gatherings politely declined. I told myself I was done chasing approval, done bending just to feel included. But blood ties have a way of pulling you back, especially when guilt is woven into every word your parents ever spoke. By the end of summer, I was cautiously inching toward reconciling. My grandmother, the only one who'd ever shown me unconditional support, had been asking when I'd visit. She still thought the best of everyone, and part of me wanted to believe maybe things had cooled down enough for a fresh start. That fragile hope didn't last long. One Saturday afternoon, I drove over to the family house. The front door was wide open, laughter spilling out onto the porch. Inside, the living room was filled with relatives. Balloons again, this time in pale green, and a large banner strung across the wall. Welcome baby shower round 2. I froze in the doorway. Round 2. Chloe hadn't even given birth yet. Apparently, one extravagant shower wasn't enough. My parents had decided to host another. And as I stepped into the living room, trying not to let my shock show, I noticed something else. Every relative was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. People who had skipped my graduation without a second thought were now piled onto couches, balancing paper plates of food, cooing over Chloe's belly, as if she were a celebrity. I forced a smile when my grandmother spotted me and hurried over. "Oh, Ethan, you came. I'm so glad." She hugged me tight, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of belonging. But it didn't last. The second my dad saw me, his face tightened. "You weren't invited," he said flatly. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Conversation around us hushed. "This is for family," he added, as if I didn't qualify. Something in me snapped at that. But before I could respond, Chloe piped up from her throne of pillows and gift bags. "It's fine, Dad. Let him stay. He can make himself useful." She looked right at me, her smirk widening. "You can help carry in the gifts from the car. They're heavy, and I'm not supposed to lift anything." Laughter rippled around the room, some of it nervous, some of it genuine. I stood frozen, heat rising in my chest. Was I the entertainment now? The laborer brought in to haul boxes while everyone else enjoyed the party? I wanted to walk out then and there, but before I could move, my mom appeared beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "Ethan, don't make this harder than it has to be. Your sister is carrying the next generation of this family. It's your duty to support her." Duty. That was the word she chose. As though my diploma, my years of work, my entire identity meant nothing compared to Chloe's pregnancy. I clenched my jaw and followed Chloe's boyfriend, Kyle, outside to the driveway. He was leaning against a brand new SUV with a smug look on his face. "Oh good. You showed up," he said, gesturing to the trunk filled with baby supplies, strollers, car seats, boxes of diapers. "We could use the extra hands. I'd help, but you know bad back." He tapped his side like it was some inside joke. I lifted the first box without a word, my silence the only shield I had against the fury boiling inside. When we came back in, the room erupted into applause, not for me, of course, but for Chloe as she held up another gift, squealing over tiny baby clothes. I set the box down in the corner and caught snippets of conversation. "Ethan should really be more supportive. I heard he skipped the first shower out of spite. Poor Chloe, having to deal with a jealous brother." Each whisper felt like another brick wall closing me off. Not only had they abandoned me on my graduation day, but now they had rewritten the story so that I was the villain. But the breaking point didn't come until dessert. Everyone gathered around as my dad tapped a glass with his spoon, calling for attention. "Before we cut the cake," he said, "I want to say a few words. Chloe, we are so proud of you. You've brought this family together in a way nothing else ever has. You've given us purpose, something to celebrate. You're the reason we're all here today." Applause thundered through the room. Then he glanced at me. "And Ethan, well, maybe one day you'll understand what it means to put family above yourself. Until then, we'll keep praying for you." It was like the floor dropped out from under me. My own father, in front of everyone, reducing me to nothing more than a selfish disappointment. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. My grandmother's hand tightened on mine, but even her presence couldn't soften the sting. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just stood there, diploma unacknowledged, achievements erased, while my family applauded the sister who had never lifted a finger to earn anything. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The quiet resignation I'd carried for years hardened into something sharper. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was betrayal. I left that second baby shower without a word. No slammed doors, no shouting match, just quiet steps out of the house and into the evening air. The sound of laughter and applause followed me down the driveway, muffled once I closed my car door, but it still echoed in my head. As I gripped the steering wheel, I realized I hadn't even eaten a single bite of cake. And yet, I felt sick to my stomach. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. New messages piling up already. I didn't have to look to know they were from my parents. Probably warnings about how disrespectful I had been by leaving early or how I'd embarrassed Chloe. I turned the phone off and drove home in silence. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, staring at the diploma case on my desk. I hadn't hung it up. I hadn't even framed it. What was the point? Every time I looked at it, all I could hear was my dad's voice saying Chloe had given the family purpose in a way nothing else ever had. My achievement didn't matter, not to them. Anyway, I kept replaying that moment the way everyone's eyes turned toward me, not with pride, but with judgment, as if I'd committed some unforgivable sin simply by existing outside Chloe's spotlight. Days turned into weeks, and I started pulling away from everything. I stopped checking family group chats altogether, muted social media notifications, and spent my evenings walking aimlessly through the city just to keep from sitting in the silence of my apartment. At work, I put on a polite smile, but inside I was running on fumes. Friends would ask, "So, how was graduation? Did your family come?" And I dodged the question, changing the subject before the lump in my throat could betray me. The loneliness dug deep. For so long, I believed that maybe, just maybe, if I worked hard enough, my family would finally see me. Now, I understood the truth. There was no finish line where I'd win their approval. They had chosen their story, and I didn't fit into it. That realization hollowed me out. Even grocery shopping felt heavy, walking past young families, watching parents lift toddlers into carts, laughing together. I couldn't stop thinking, why couldn't my parents give me even half of that energy? The worst part was my grandmother. She called me often, her voice soft, always trying to bridge the gap. "Ethan, your parents don't mean to hurt you," she said once, though her tone betrayed doubt. "They're just caught up right now. Chloe needs them." She wanted to believe the best, but even she couldn't hide the hesitation in her voice anymore. I loved her too much to burden her with the whole truth, so I'd just tell her I was busy or that I needed time. And then I'd sit in the quiet of my apartment, torn between missing her warmth and resenting the family she defended. One night, I got a voicemail from my dad that sank deeper than any of the others. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "Ethan, your behavior has been unacceptable. We've talked it over, and until you apologize to your sister and the family, we can't welcome you back. You're isolating yourself, and that's on you. We'll pray you come to your senses." There it was again, apologize. As if the crime was mine. As if I were the one who'd abandoned them. I remember sitting on my bed, gripping my phone, my hands shaking. That single word had become a leash they expected me to wrap around my own neck. But somewhere in the fog of despair, a new thought began to form. If I was already the villain in their story, then maybe I didn't need to keep playing the role they'd assigned me. Maybe I didn't need to spend my life trying to win them over. I wasn't ready to act yet. I didn't have the strength. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet, I started sketching plans in my head. Not grand schemes of revenge just yet, but small ways to reclaim pieces of myself they had chipped away over the years. Framing my diploma, saving money for a place bigger than this shoebox apartment, finding people who saw me not through the lens of my sister's shadow, but as myself. It was a fragile resolve, but it was a start. And though I hadn't yet decided what form it would take, I knew this. If my family wanted me to play the role of the forgotten son, they were in for a surprise, because I wasn't planning to stay forgotten forever. The shift didn't happen overnight. At first, it was small, almost invisible, like planting seeds in soil I wasn't sure would ever grow. I started with my diploma. One Saturday morning, I took it to a frame shop. The woman behind the counter helped me pick a simple black frame with a matte finish. When I hung it above my desk, the apartment didn't feel so empty anymore. That piece of paper wasn't just a reminder of my family's absence. It was proof of my persistence, my grit. Every late-night shift, every essay I'd hammered out at 3 o'clock in the morning, every sacrifice I'd made, it was all there, staring back at me. And it was mine. Work was the next turning point. I'd been at my entry-level job for just a few months, mostly doing grunt work and keeping my head down. But once I stopped pouring my energy into chasing my family's approval, I found myself leaning into the work instead. I volunteered for projects no one else wanted. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to master the details. My boss noticed. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and said, "Ethan, I see how hard you're working. How would you feel about leading the next project proposal?" My heart raced. It wasn't glamorous, it was spreadsheets and research, but it was a chance to prove myself on my own terms. I threw myself into that project. While my family was busy planning gender reveals and baby photo shoots, I was staying late at the office, learning presentation skills from YouTube tutorials, and refining my pitch until I could recite it in my sleep. When the day came to present, I stood in front of a panel of executives, my palms sweating but my voice steady. I laid out every detail with a confidence I didn't know I had. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment before the head of the department said, "That's the most thorough proposal we've seen from a junior associate in years." My boss beamed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Truly seen. The recognition came with a raise modest, but enough to ease the constant anxiety that had lived in my chest for years. With that money, I upgraded my apartment. Nothing flashy, just a one-bedroom with more light and a kitchen that didn't feel like a closet. I painted the walls myself, filled the shelves with books I'd always wanted to read, and bought a decent coffee maker. Slowly, the space became a reflection of me, not a reminder of what I lacked. But the biggest change came socially. I had always been reserved, hesitant to let people in after years of being dismissed at home. Yet, as I gained confidence at work, I found myself opening up more. I started saying yes to after-work drinks, joining colleagues for trivia nights, even letting a few friendships blossom into something deeper. One coworker, Leo, became a close friend. He was the first person I ever told the full story to. The skipped graduation, the baby shower, the text from my dad. I expected him to look at me like I was exaggerating, but instead, he shook his head and said, "Man, that's brutal. No wonder you've been carrying that weight. But listen, your worth isn't tied to them. You're building something real, and they can't take that away." Those words stuck with me. For years, I had been desperate for my family to validate me. But here was someone outside of that circle reminding me I didn't need their permission to exist. And the more I leaned into my own growth, the clearer it became. I wasn't powerless anymore. I started to notice the contrast more sharply when I occasionally checked in on family through social media. Photos of Chloe's baby showers, her nursery, the miracle of motherhood, posts, they were everywhere. But beneath the shiny veneer, cracks showed. Kyle, her boyfriend, seemed less present with each passing month. Rumors circulated through extended family about money troubles, about fights behind closed doors. Meanwhile, my life was moving steadily upward. I wasn't rich, I wasn't famous, but I had stability, and I had earned it. The real turning point came one evening when my boss called me into her office again. "Ethan," she said, "I want you to consider applying for the management training program. It's competitive, but I think you'd be a strong candidate." My chest tightened with disbelief. Just a year earlier, I had been the kid sitting alone at graduation, staring at a text demanding an apology. Now, someone saw leadership in me. Someone believed I could step into a position of influence. That night, I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at my desk beneath the framed diploma, and stared at the application form. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about whether my parents would approve or whether Chloe would overshadow me. I was thinking about what I wanted and how far I'd come. The power I had once begged for in my family's eyes was beginning to take shape in my own. Still, the past wasn't gone. Their words lingered, sharp and heavy. And though I was building a life without them, I knew this story wasn't finished. Because sooner or later, the family that had cast me aside would come knocking again. And when they did, they would find someone very different from the son they had dismissed. It was almost eerie how the tides began to shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing scraps of approval. I was being sought out. My name started circulating in higher circles at work, not just for the management program, but also for the way I had a knack for organizing chaos. I became the go-to person when a project was falling apart, the steady hand people trusted when deadlines loomed. That reputation carried weight, and with it came influence. When I officially got accepted into the management training program, it was like stepping into an entirely new world. Leadership seminars, executive mentorship, strategy sessions. Doors that had always felt bolted shut suddenly swung open. One of the executives, a sharp but fair woman named Eleanor, took a special interest in me. She pulled me aside after a presentation one day and said, "Ethan, you've got something people can't fake, resilience. Don't waste it. Learn how to leverage it." Her words became a mantra. I threw myself into learning not just how to manage people, but how to navigate politics, how to read the room, how to play the long game. And slowly, I began to see how those same skills could apply outside of work. Because my family hadn't disappeared. They were still there in the background, living their curated version of life online. Chloe had her baby, a boy named Noah, and the family acted like it was the second coming. Photos flooded my feeds. My parents beaming as grandparents, Chloe draped in pastel blankets with her miracle child. Captions about family being everything. Family being everything. I nearly laughed the first time I saw it. They had rewritten the narrative so completely that anyone looking in from the outside would assume we were the picture of unity. But reality has a way of seeping through cracks. A cousin of mine, someone I was still on good terms with, reached out over coffee one afternoon. "Ethan, I don't know if you know this," she whispered, leaning across the table, "but your parents have been asking around about you. They say you're distant, that you've lost your way. They're trying to make it sound like you're the problem." My jaw tightened. Of course they were. They couldn't admit they had abandoned me, so instead, they were crafting a new story that I had abandoned them. That same cousin also let something else slip, almost casually. "Chloe and Kyle are having money problems. He's not working steadily, and the baby expenses are piling up. Your parents are stressed. They've been covering more than they expected." I sat back in my chair, my coffee suddenly tasting sharper. Money problems. Dependence. Cracks in the golden pedestal. For years, I had been the one scraping by, the one they dismissed as a burden while they funneled resources into Chloe's every whim. Now, with their chosen star under pressure, the roles were shifting. And unlike them, I had built something stable, brick by brick, without their help. Around the same time, my boss offered me the chance to oversee a high-profile account. It wasn't just a promotion, it came with a significant raise and, more importantly, visibility. If I pulled it off, I'd cement my reputation not just in my department, but across the company. I worked harder than I ever had, channeling every ounce of hurt and rejection into laser focus. When the project launched successfully, bringing in record numbers, I was given a permanent management position. My salary doubled. My name started appearing in company newsletters. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I moved into a sleek new apartment, one with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. I bought a car that actually started on the first try every morning. And when I walked into meetings, people listened. I wasn't invisible anymore. That's when the first text from my mom arrived. "Ethan, sweetheart, it's been too long. We'd love for you to come by and see Noah. He's growing so fast, sweetheart." The same woman who told me I needed to apologize was now dangling her grandson like bait. A week later, my dad called. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played in that calm, commanding tone I knew too well. "Ethan, it's time to let the past go. Your family needs you. Noah needs his uncle." Those words stuck with me. Your family needs you. For years, I had needed them, and they had turned away. Now, suddenly, the roles had reversed. And as much as it stung, it also lit a fire inside me, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one on the back foot. I was in a position of strength. They needed me. And that realization, that delicious, dangerous realization, was when the idea of payback began to take shape. I didn't answer their messages right away. In fact, I let weeks pass. Every day, I left my phone on silent. Every text I ignored, every voicemail I deleted without listening. It wasn't about being petty. It was about timing. For the first time, they weren't holding the cards, and I wanted them to feel that shift slowly, deeply. Then, one afternoon, I ran into my cousin again. She smirked when she saw me. "You know, Chloe's been asking about you a lot. Apparently, she and Kyle are in a bad spot financially. Your parents are covering their rent now, and with the baby, they're drowning." She paused, lowering her voice. "They keep saying, if only Ethan would step up." Step up. That phrase burned into me. For years, I'd been invisible, dismissed, mocked. Now, with their golden girl struggling, suddenly I was supposed to be the responsible one. No, not this time. That weekend, I dressed sharp, slim navy suit, polished shoes, the kind of look that made people straighten in their chairs when you walked into a room. I drove my new car, the one that gleamed under the sun, to my parents' house. I hadn't been back since the second baby shower, and as I pulled up, the sight of the same driveway where I'd once been ordered to haul boxes hit me with a jolt of memory. I rang the bell, and when the door opened, my mom's face lit up. "Ethan, oh, sweetheart, you came." She pulled me into a hug, but it felt rehearsed, too sweet, like she'd been practicing it in the mirror. My dad was in the living room, Noah in his arms, and Chloe perched on the couch. The baby gurgled happily, the only innocent in the room. "Look at you," my dad said, eyeing the suit, the watch on my wrist. His voice carried that mix of pride and condescension I'd known all my life. "Doing well, huh?" "Better than well," I replied evenly, taking a seat. I let the silence hang for a moment before adding, "I heard you've been having challenges." The word made Chloe's jaw tighten. "If you're here to rub it in, don't bother." My mom rushed to smooth things over. "What your sister means is, things have been difficult. Kyle's hours were cut, and the baby's expenses are overwhelming. We thought maybe as family, you could help." There it was. The ask. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I leaned back, folded my hands, and looked each of them in the eye. "You want my help?" I asked slowly. "The same family who skipped my graduation? The same family who told me I owed them an apology while I sat alone on the biggest day of my life? The same family who made me feel like I wasn't welcome in my own home?" The room fell silent. Chloe's cheeks flushed, and my dad's eyes narrowed. "That was the past," he said firmly. "We need to move forward. Family is about sacrifice." "Funny," I said with a small smile. "Because I sacrificed for years, and all I ever got was silence. Now you want my support. Why?" "Because the golden child isn't shining so brightly anymore." My mom gasped. Chloe shot to her feet. "How dare you," she snapped. "You don't know what it's like to raise a child." "You're right," I said, standing too. "But I do know what it's like to walk across a stage alone because my family decided a baby shower was more important than my future. I know what it's like to be erased from every conversation because my sister needed all the attention. And I know what it's like to build a life from nothing, without a dime or an ounce of encouragement from any of you." Their faces shifted. Anger, shame, disbelief. I let the weight of my words settle before delivering the final blow. "You made your choice that day. You chose who mattered. And now, I'm making mine." I slipped a card onto the coffee table. Not a check, not cash, just my business card, sleek and simple, with my new title embossed across it. "If you ever want to treat me like family again, start by acknowledging who I am now. Not the forgotten son, not the backup plan, but the person who stood on his own when you all turned away." Then I walked out. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just left, the same way I had years ago. But this time, I wasn't broken. I was in control. The next day, I checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls. Messages ranging from pleading to furious. One from my mom read, "Ethan, please. Your sister is in tears. We didn't mean to hurt you. Can't you just help us this once?" Another from my dad said, "You're being selfish again. Family is about giving, not holding grudges." But I didn't reply, because for the first time, their desperation didn't feel like a burden I had to carry. It felt like justice. The weeks after my visit to their house were some of the strangest of my life. For years, I had been the one chasing after scraps of attention, the one calling, apologizing, begging to be seen. Now, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My parents alternated between guilt and fury. My mom's messages dripped with sorrowful pleas. "Ethan, we just want to start fresh." "No one needs his uncle," while my dad's were sharp commands. "Enough games. Step up for your family." Chloe, on the other hand, was pure venom. One text read, "You think you're better than me now? Don't forget who gave up everything so you could have a normal life." I stared at that one for a long time, wondering what reality she was living in, because I couldn't recall her sacrificing a single thing for me. I ignored them all, not out of spite anymore, but because I realized I didn't owe them anything. Every call I declined, every message I left unanswered, was a quiet declaration. I was no longer theirs to manipulate. The fallout hit harder than even I expected. My cousin called me one night, her voice buzzing with secondhand drama. "Your parents are furious," she said. "They told everyone you refused to help, and now people are starting to ask questions." Aunt Carol straight up said, "Well, maybe if you treated Ethan better, he'd want to help." She chuckled. "It's unraveling. Everyone's seeing it now." Then came the bombshell. Kyle, my sister's boyfriend, packed up and left. No warning. No, "I'll be back," just gone. Word spread fast. He'd been drowning under the pressure, resentful of the expectations. And one day, he simply walked out, leaving Chloe with an infant and a pile of overdue bills. My parents tried to keep it quiet at first, but you can only hide something like that for so long. Soon, the whispers turned into pitying stares at church, and the pedestal Chloe had been placed on wobbled until it crashed to the ground. That was when the desperation reached its peak. My dad showed up at my office. He didn't make it past the lobby. Security called up to let me know a man was downstairs insisting he had to speak with me. I told them to send him away. Later, I found out he'd stood there for almost an hour, red-faced and pacing, before finally storming off. That night, He left me a voicemail that started in anger and ended in a cracked voice. "Ethan, we just need your help. Please." But I didn't cave, because help wasn't what they wanted. They wanted control, the old dynamic where I was the forgotten son forever reaching while they pulled the strings. And that person didn't exist anymore. Months rolled on, and my life only grew steadier. I got promoted again, my projects gaining recognition outside the company. I traveled for the first time, standing in airports with a passport in my hand, free in ways I never thought possible. I filled my apartment with laughter from friends who actually showed up for me, who cheered my wins without envy. Every step forward felt like reclaiming another piece of the boy they had tried so hard to erase. Meanwhile, the family that once smirked at my struggles began to unravel. Chloe moved back in with my parents. Her independence gone, her perfect life reduced to tense silence and financial strain. My parents, who once bragged about their united family, now fielded awkward questions about why their son never came around, why their daughter seemed so bitter, why their lives looked so different from the glossy picture they'd painted. The final nail came at my grandmother's birthday. She was the only one I agreed to see, and I rented out a small, private dining room at a restaurant she loved. When I arrived, she hugged me tight, tears in her eyes, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." That was enough for me. But then, as the evening went on, I saw my parents and Chloe enter the restaurant. They hadn't been invited. They must have found out through someone else. They spotted me across the room in a tailored suit, friends and colleagues at my side, my grandmother glowing with joy at the celebration I'd organized. They tried to approach, but the maitre d' stopped them at the door, reminding them it was a private event. My mom called out, her voice trembling, "Ethan, please let us in. We're family." The room went quiet. Every eye turned to me. I stood, walked to the doorway, and looked at them one last time. Their faces were desperate, pleading, stripped of the arrogance they had once worn so proudly. "Family," I said quietly. "Family doesn't abandon you when you need them most. Family doesn't erase you. You made your choice, and now I've made mine." I turned back into the dining room, and the maitre d' closed the door behind me. My grandmother reached for my hand, her smile steady. The noise of the restaurant faded, replaced by the warmth of people who truly cared. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I hadn't lost a family. I had built one. And as for the old one, the ones who demanded apologies, who smirked as I stood alone, they were left outside, knocking on a door that would never open.